that to y'all, but.
Mr. Passman, could you speak for us, please?
Joe, can you hear us?
Hey,
We may have sound.
Oh, there you go.
absolutely. Tell me
Joe, can you hear us?
You know the computer?
Yes, fine.
Now we can hear you.
I think we're good.
Oh, we got it. We got it. Yep, it was a Zoom issue. Yep.
All right, if everyone can hear us, we're now on full audio. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. Let's go and get the Finance Committee Monday, August 16th underway. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Our committee is made up of myself, Vice Chairman Chris Hervishon, Gerald Dawson, Stuart Rodman, and Brian Flewelling. We appreciate them all being here today, and also all the other committee or all the other council members who are more than welcome to join us and be part of this and input, and their vote counts as much as anyone else that's on the committee. So again, thank you for everyone for being here. We're going to go ahead and approve the agenda. If I've got a motion to approve the agenda, I think we're going to then amend it. But again, if I can have approval on the agenda.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rodman. A second, please.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you for the second. So we have, agenda has been approved. Are there any amendment or any changes to the agenda?
We do need to have one amendment to move item 10 into the executive session for receipt of legal advice.
All right, so number 10, authorization for the county administrator to enter to an intergovernmental agreement. We're going to move that then to before number 13, an executive session.
Yeah, the title of executive session, I think, covers us.
Okay.
There'll be two items in executive session if you all approve this.
Yes, sir. Any other amendments to the agenda?
If I might, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
before
sir.
I make a motion to amend, which I'd be happy to do, I'm curious why we feel it necessary to talk about the local option sales tax in executive session. I'm sure that we'll be getting legal advice, but isn't that really something that the public can hear?
Yeah, it's up to the council. This could be a potential legal situation with regards to hiring the consultant, given the limitations with the ethics statute and state law. So we thought it would be better for you all to have the freedom to ask any questions you wanted to about the legal nature of this intergovernmental agreement in executive session. But I'm happy to do either, whatever is comfortable for the committee.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we add the item for executive session. However, I hope that upon the end of the executive session, we can receive a brief summary in open session about what the general constraints are, maybe not the specific issues, but the general constraints that we'll be operating under in regards to that contract.
We can do that.
That's my motion, sir.
Yes, sir. Stu?
I will second it, and in doing so, I share Brian's concern, and hopefully we'll limit the executive session piece to the legal advice and have most of the discussion in open session.
Good.
Thank you, Stu. That's exactly right.
Good, thank you, Brian. Good point. So we have a motion to and a second to change the agenda. Without exception, I'm going to go ahead and approve this. Is there any exception to this?
Well, I think you have to approve the amendment and then the agenda.
All right, so let's approve the amendment. Is there any exception to the amendment? Chris?
Yes, please. I would prefer to vote no. I think we should just have it in open session. I don't see any reason not to.
Okay. All right, so let's do a roll call vote. for this, and let's go with Brian, you made the motion.
I'll say yes to the amendment.
Stu?
Yes.
All right. Let's go to Mr. Dawson.
Yes.
And obviously, Mr. Hervishon.
No.
All right. Mr. Somerville.
Yes.
Ms. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Passman.
Yes.
And again, I'm looking at Mr. McKellen.
Yes.
All right. And the chair votes yes. So looks like it is.
Gerald, you got Gerald?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Glover.
Yes to.
Mr. Glover?
I'm yes too.
Yes, too? All
I
right.
think, I don't think we got Gerald yet.
He did.
Did we get
Yes.
Gerald? Okay, I apologize.
Oh, no.
All right, so 9 yes, 1 no. The motion passes, and now we look to approve the agenda. Stu, is that correct?
I think so.
All right.
Yes, it's the approval of the agenda as amended.
Good, thank you. All right, so we're looking to approve the amendment as the agenda as amended. Do I have a
I move
Motion?
without exception, yeah, motion to approve.
okay? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so we're going to approve the agenda without exception. Are there any exceptions? The amendment has passed. All right, so we are now on to approval of our minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from last time?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robin. All right, the minutes have been approved. Is there any exception, I can't say that word today, exception to the motion? All right, we're going to approve the minutes without exception. All right, so let's move on then. Are there any citizens' comments, Sarah? Do we have anyone who'd like to speak today?
Are you here to speak for this one? Okay. No, so there aren't.
All right, no one online, so no citizens' comments for today, so let's get into our business. And we have the update from our interim CFO, Mr. Hayes Williams. I know he's online today. Hayes, if you'd like, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Lawson, and please excuse me for not being there in person. I'm doing CPE to get my continuing education requirements to keep my certification as a CPA. I wanted to go over some things before I got into the financial reporting. The one thing I wanted to start off with was I want to recognize one of our finance employees who is retiring after 14 years with the finance department. She's going to be going RVing and going to visit her grandkids. But her name is Linda Mayetta. And y'all can either blame her or thank her for me being at the county. She was instrumental in getting me over here. She has really been the glue that holds the department together in a lot of facets. She's a good friend, and she'll be very, very much missed. And I just wanted to recognize her in front of the finance committee.
Thank you, Mr. Go ahead, Hayes.
Okay, so that brings us into the internal audit. Finance and administration have been working on a draft. I'll come to you this meeting. The internal auditors, through this kind of discussion back and forth, and we're drafting our responses to their comments. They ended up doing a little bit of additional field work, which will add additional comments to the letter, which I think is a good thing and will only help improve the things in finance, purchasing, and DSM. We're hoping to get another draft from them in the next week and a half, and then we'll have to get about comments. We're definitely committed to having a draft by next finance committee meeting. The big concern is we could have probably wrapped it up, but we really wanted you, council, and the finance committee as a whole to have time to really digest everything that's in there and the necessary improvements that we'll need to make. That brings me to our year-end close and external audit. We're currently in the process of closing out our financial statements for June 30th. We're preparing accruals. We're booking entries. We're getting ready for the external audit. We have the signed engagement letter from Alden and Jenkins. David Irwin is the audit engagement partner. they have sent out basically what is a PVC, but what I used to call when I was auditing a PVC list, which is a prepared by client list. But now it's a little different. It's a file import in a program called SeriLink. We're in the process. We've delegated it out to various employees and departments within the county. They're actively working on getting that taken care of. So we've talked to them about scheduling the time for them to come out, and we will keep going for them. Finance is also working on closing out some accounts with BB&T into Wells Fargo. These were kind of accounts that were left in limbo after the conversion of Wells Fargo. We are updating the vendors that would deposit checks in there and getting them changed over, and we're working closely with the treasurer on that. Finance is also working on Intergov, trying to get that completed by the first of the year. This is part of Venus software as it relates to business licenses and permitting. This is going to be key for the business licenses for EDRA. We were working hand with IT and those other departments. And lastly, I wanted to tell you about recruitment. Finance is currently down about 3.5 FTEs. We're also going to be down another after these, unfortunately. We have positions posted out on the internet for accountants and accounts receivable specialists. And then after we get the results of the internal audit, we will probably make additional staffing changes related to that. But that really is the update on finance from me. If y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Any questions for Mr. Williams? Yes, Chris, go ahead.
I'll go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hayes, can you expand a little bit on the need for additional field work with the internal audit? Because I seem to remember last time we had an update on that was maybe June, and we were kind of a week or two away from getting a draft letter from the internal auditors, and I'm just kind of wondering what's causing the delay and the need for additional field work. If you could just expand on that a little bit.
Well, the councilman, the way that things go is typically they draft a letter, and at the bottom of every comment, we have a management response. Going through everything with them, thought we were going to have it buttoned up early last week. In our discussions, they had another item that they wanted to go out and look at, which, until they issued the report, that is their option. And they ended up going and doing some further testing, which is going to result in another comment, which means they're going to have a response from us. And we just felt that it was the county to take our time and get it done right the first time instead of rushing and trying to get it out to y'all. And I really didn't want to, personally, myself, I did not want to give this to council on Friday at noon. I want y'all to have at least a week, maybe 2 weeks to be able to go through it.
Councilman Fevershaw, anything else?
Yeah, I guess just one follow-up, but any thoughts as far as the internal audit for 2021? What next steps might be, departments that we look at, things like that, now that we've got this budgeted on a yearly basis?
Councilman Fevershaw, I think that's going to be at council's discretion. I believe y'all are instrumental in saying what you wanted to look at. The administration would be happy to make a suggestion. But at the end of the day, the internal audit's coming to y'all and giving y'all valuable information that y'all need. But I'm happy to make suggestions, but we're going to need to rebid it and do an RFP and RFQ process for that.
I think it would be helpful personally, but obviously defer to the committee.
Good. Any other questions for Mr. Williams? All right, Hayes, thank you for the update. And I think you've now got the first agenda item as well. So if you want to go ahead and discussion and presentation of the year-to-date financial statements for fiscal year 2022.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was going to look at item 8. This is the 2021, July 30th, 31st, 2021. And I thought about, I was on the fence between doing June and July. There's still going to be a significant amount of adjustments in June for the year end. We have a 60-day carryback provision that we're going to need to book and do twos and do fronts and various funds. But we're in the process of trying to wrap that up in the expeditious manner. But I thought it'd be better to get a look at July 31st. So if you look at that first page, we really have budgeted revenues of about 132 million, and we've only collected about 2.3 out of those. And you're seeing lags in ad valorem taxes, and that's to be expected. We're not expecting those until mid-year. You also see a lag in intergovernmental funding. Typically, that's done on a quarterly basis. I would not expect to see any of those revenues until after until October. Fines and forfeitures are still lagging with COVID-19 as it was last year. We're kind of still in the same ballpark with that. The interest from the LGIPs and the pool cash hasn't been allocated yet. That's just an accounting function that hasn't gotten there yet, but we plan on doing that on a monthly basis going forward. And then the miscellaneous transfers and revenues and transfers are lagging, but I think they're going to correct by year end. So that kind of walks you through page 7. Page 8 is the expense side of it, and we are in about 2.7 million out of a budgeted 132 million. The total budgeted expenditures is really approximating the percent that is completed. You have a total expense of about 8.9, and we expect about 8.3, so we're definitely in the ballpark. Nothing really popped out. The only thing that really popped out was the public health. It was a lot higher. It's 16.3% instead of the expected 8.33. The reason behind this is we sent the first payments to Beaufort Memorial Hospital and Beaufort Jasper Public Health. That totaled about $426,000, which is really driving that number. And so with that, after that, you have page 9 and 10, which are the details of the revenues. And then you have pages 11 and 12, which are the details of the expenses. Which, if you have any questions on, I'd be happy to address.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Williams on his presentation?
Just one.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams, in the public health, is that a monthly invoice, or is that a quarterly payment?
That's a great question, Councilman Glover. Those are done on a quarterly basis. So when we write the check in January, it's for in July, it's for July, August, and September. So we'll be writing another check in October for October, November, and December. But it was something they needed to get in hand, and it's typically the way that we have done business in the past.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anyone online? Am I missing someone online? Speak up, because again, I can't see everybody, but no questions from anyone online? All right, good. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Let's then move on to our next.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know you were. One more question, Mr. Williams.
The floor is yours.
Talk to me about the line item for county attorney. Almost half of that has been expended already. Kind of give me an idea why.
Yes, so that's easy to explain. The expenses are actually spent and encumbered. So what happens at the beginning of the year, the county attorney will do a blanket PO for all of the various attorneys that they do business with. And although it's encumbered, it's not necessarily spent yet. So it's a little. I would have to split that number out between what was spent and encumbered. But right now, off the top of my head, I would have to say it's more encumbered than spent. It's just because it's a blanket PO for the entire year, if that makes any sense.
No, but I'm gonna accept your explanation and we move from there. I do know that last year's budget, that line item was extremely high, so I'm just wondering whether we're heading back in that same direction, that's all.
And I can address that at a later date. I can send you an email breaking down how spending versus covered on the county attorney if that might be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll do.
All right, Councilman Glover, great question. Anything else? You good?
That's it. I'm
All
good.
right.
Okay.
All right, well, let's move on if there's no other questions. Agenda item number 9, consideration of fiscal year 21 carryover items. And I think that we've got Ms. Harriet who's going to give us a presentation on this.
Chairman Lawson, I hate to disappoint. I know that y'all are probably tired of hearing me talk. Pinky had a family issue that she had to take care of, and she asked me to present this for her if I would, and I said that I would. So it shouldn't be that big a deal.
Well, you've been a good target so far, so go ahead on the next item.
Well, thank you. This has to do with the 2021 carryover items. They were basically it's supposed to be capital projects and things that our various departments and elected officials did not get done by year end. This list basically delineates everything that's supposed to be out there that we're asking to carry forward. This would need to be basically this is just showing it to y'all, but it would need to proceed as an ordinance, and it would need to go in front of council for 3 votes. But we wanted to give you the detail and kind of just let you see what's out there. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them, and if I can, I'll get back to you.
Yep. Ms. Howard, go ahead.
I had a question regarding the ambulances. I'm assuming that is due not being able to get them, or the carryover.
A lot of the things on this list that you'll see there is carryover as a result of the delays that we're experiencing to finish and get things due to the pandemic COVID-19 responses. So that's why the list is so large and such a high amount.
Yeah, it usually is not.
We're still playing catch up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Alice, anything else? No?
That was my only question.
Councilman Glover? Yes, sir.
Anyway, just a quick, crazy question. When I look at some of the projects here, particular ones mainly the ones out of Bluffton, none of these projects can be handled by impact fee money, huh?
I'll probably need to defer to Hayes or Whitney on that question. The revenue sources that were dedicated as a part of the budget for carryover will be the revenue sources that we still plan to use for those. But you all, since you didn't expend that money during the past budget year, you all have to approve this so we can carry it forward into the upcoming fiscal year. So yeah, there's will be a combination of all sorts of things. So if the revenue source was, if it was slated back then to be paid for with impact fees, then it'll be paid for with impact fee funds.
Even if it weren't, could we designate it as impact fees? What I'm asking, particularly when you look at the kind of funding that's in impact on certain areas, certain communities, and
I'd have to know specific projects in order to answer that question. Typically, impact fees can only be used for capacity building projects. So like a road, if we're expanding a road, doing a road improvement project that's adding capacity to that road, that would be impact fee eligible. Parks and Rec, if we're adding on to a building or adding new facilities to a park that adds capacity, then that would be impact fee eligible, as long as it's in our impact fee project list.
I got you. So like renovation could not be used for impact.
Renovations and maintenance can't be used for, you can't use impact fees for that
I
because
didn't
it
think
doesn't
so.
generally
I thought I
happen.
asked the question though, that's all.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
it's kind of
Okay.
good question.
Good. Any other questions?
Like a motion?
Would like a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the FY22 budget to include, but not limited to, the FY21 carryover.
Thank you, Mr. Rodman. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Any comments? All right. Yes, sir.
Just one or two things. I think it'd be helpful for us to receive an update on the mill value for both the county budget and the school budget as we're talking about this. And secondly, I'd perhaps look for a recommendation from staff on whether or not this would be a time to consider the request from the solicitor that was deferred. But those are just comments, they're not subject to making the motion.
Any other discussion? All right, I wrote it down so I didn't stumble over it again. We're going to pass this without exception.
Okay.
Is there any exception to the current
objection,
motion?
that's a little easier.
Right. I probably should say that. Is there any objection to the current motion that's been seconded on the table? Seeing no objection, it passes. All right, we're going to move on then, and the next item has been moved to executive session. So next up is the 11th item on our agenda, ordinance to redirect expenditures to the general obligation bond series. And Hayes, it looks like you're our target again.
Yes, sir. We are first reading of I guess of an ordinance that we'll have to go through finance and to county council. If y'all remember, in August of 2020, we issued about $36 million in bonds. Approximately $11,775,000 of that was dedicated to capital improvements. Of that $11,775,000, $5.5 million of it was dedicated to the admin building. And what staff has done has broken out the projects by need assessment. And if you look, you'll see the title of the project and the location. And over to the side, we have more repairs and improvements likely to exceed $5.5 million. Also, we want to put in numbers, but it just seems like numbers are always a moving target. You know, when you say, well, we allocated $100,000, but it's really 150, or but it's really 75. What Jared and his team plans to attack all of these facility maintenance needs together and try, and they're not to exceed the $5.5 million. So it's a little bit different presentation than finance is used to. I'm used to splitting out every dollar and penny, but I think this is a much it's a lot better use. It gives you a broader picture of what we plan to do with this $5.5 million. You're worried. You never know what's out there. You never know when a roof's going to have a hole or a leak in it. There may be additional reallocations of this money, but we wanted to give you this and get your approval on it, and we will proceed with the ordinance at the next county council meeting if approved. Do you have any questions?
All right, any questions from any council member? Mr. Hervershaw, go ahead.
And I apologize for the non-specificity of this question, but I seem to remember shortly after we came on council, there was a discussion about a maintenance building that had, shall we say, repair issues. Has that been addressed? And if not, why didn't it make it onto this list?
Which maintenance building are you referring to?
There's one that had an infestation, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was just a really bad spot. That was outlined by Mr. Weaver at our first retreat. Well, at the first retreat that.
Are you talking about the main EMS building over on Depot Road? We hear a lot about that building, so.
could have been
That may be-
Mark, correct?
I'm trying to remember too, but I do remember what you're talking about. There was obviously an infestation as well as some other maintenance issues that,
There were several.
Yeah.
Several Public Works building.
I don't know. Yeah, it sounds, was it Public Works, Alice?
Remember
Public Works was one of them, and the one on King Street was one too.
There were many.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are many, that's why we're recommending that instead of the 5.5 million being spent to reskin this building to make it look like the courthouse, that we reallocate that money to various projects. We have a major issue with the roof in this building, issue with the roof in the south, at the south campus. We've got plenty of deferred maintenance issues and obligations that we feel like this money would be better spent for, and that's the project. But if there's other things that we need to look into, I'll be glad to get Mark Rosen, our facilities director, to look into that to see if there's something else we need to attend to.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess my real concern / question is whether or not this is the optimal list to have to make the buildings that we have as a county workable. You know, where people can actually spend time there and work there and be safe from elements and safe from infestations and things like that.
We have a gentleman in charge of all of that that's got 40-something years of service with us. He's a great resource for the county. He does an excellent job for us, and if he tells me this is where the priorities should be and the money should be spent, then I'm pretty confident in relying upon his word. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I think we've hit everything we need to hit.
Okay, fair enough. Appreciate that. I'm good.
Any other questions? I've got one question. Obviously, I appreciate y'all being frugal with our money and spending it the correct way, but obviously whenever you delay a project, such as there was a reason why this building was set to be skinned and taken care of, does that raise the cost later on of us actually needing to repair this building?
Yeah, and you'll hear the plans. The reason we're reallocating this money is on Thursday, you will hear the plans for this building as a result of the comprehensive facilities master plan from the consultant. So,
okay.
But yeah, it will probably raise the cost, but we feel like reallocating the money at this time, because it'll be a few years before we can actually do what needs to be done with the facilities master plan that you'll hear about on Thursday during the workshop.
Okay, good. We'll look forward to that. Any other questions?
Or a motion?
Go ahead, Stu.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we amend the ordinance that authorize the bond series known as 2020.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Ms. Howard, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Again, if you're online, please speak up. I can't see you, so if there is no discussion, is there any objection to the motion that's made and been seconded? Seeing no objection, the motion passes. All right, well, let's go ahead then and move on. And we're going to go into executive session, but first, just to make sure everyone knows that we do have some Finance Committee vacancies, Board of Assessment Appeals. We have 2 vacancies, and those are county-wide, not from any particular district. And at this time, if I could have a motion for us to go into executive session, we will do that. So I have a motion from council to go into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville. Is there a second?
I second, yeah.
Mr. Clever, thank you. All right, so we are now going to go into executive session.
And they will receive,
Out of executive session. Are there any matters arising?
We can't hear you.
Oh,
Start again.
Joe, can you hear us now?
Now we can hear you.
All right, so we are now back out of executive session. Are there any matters that would like to be brought for this committee out of the executive session?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Glover.
I make a motion that that the Finance Committee recommend to Council the approval of payments discussed in executive session for eligible retirees in the amount of not to exceed $125,000, subject to the retirees signing a release. Funds to come from general contingency.
I'd like to second the motion.
All right, we have a motion that has been made by Mr. Glover and seconded by Ms. Howard. Is there any discussion?
Council general contingencies, yes.
Yes. Council's, is that to clarify, that is the council general contingency fund? Okay, good. Yes, so any discussion? Is there any objection? Would like to pass this without objection. Seeing no objection, the motion passes. All right, and then second item for the out of executive committee. Is there any discussion on that second item?
Given an overview or what we discussed in the executive session, sir, so that we can so that the public will understand what's going on when there is either a motion or a failure to have a motion made.
Mr. Fleming, would you like to make that comment?
Well, you know, I'm not a lawyer, so we have to be careful. We received legal advice regarding the ethical treatment of materials in relation to a tax sale referendum, and the potential pitfalls involved, and the you know, what kind of advocacy and education is appropriate versus those that are not, and the difficulties in discerning between all of the above. And so there, you know, I don't want to talk about what was said by individual council members in the executive session. So I think that pretty much is a good overview. Would you agree with that, Kurt?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Good, thank you, Mr. Fleming. I appreciate you doing that for us. So again, hearing the overview of what was briefly discussed, is there any action out of executive session on that matter? All right, seeing nothing brought before us.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to have the administration provide some information as far as what the plan is for education?
Mr. Hervishon, I think that it would be, and obviously we have Chris here. Would Chris like to come and talk about what we can do, or what the county is going to look at doing on our end, with or without any other action?
Good afternoon. So on any referendum, and we have two this fall, the county's plan right now is to do 2 educational microsites on the webpage that are going to lay out both the positive and negatives of the referendums. The second part is we'll take those and be able to share them on social media. And we'll also talk with different members of the media about, so they can publish it in the Island Packet and kind of give and educate voters on what they will be looking at in November. And that's just a quick synopsis of the different materials that we'll be doing.
Any questions?
Yes, I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep, Brian, go ahead.
Chris, thank you very much for giving us that outline. I'd just like to make sure that the public is aware that anything that we send out will be reviewed by not only the county administrator, but the legal department, and if possible, run it through the state ethics committee, ethics commission for compliance with applicable regulations, and that the county will never be in a position of advocating for. In other words, when we say the pluses and minuses of this potential referendum. We're talking about the effects of what happens and where the money will go or won't go should it be approved or disapproved. So, and the likely effects on individual taxpayers. So I just want to make sure that everybody is clear on that in the public. Thank you.
Any other questions? And again, just to do an overview, Brian, thank you for everything that you just pointed out. That obviously it's our obligation to educate the population on the referendum or on the coming up. That we need to make sure we do that. But again, we cannot advocate either way, and so we want to make sure we do that. So, all right, good. Any other questions? All right, I think that was our last item. If this committee has nothing else, we are adjourned.
Okay. And we'll The Public Facilities Committee of Beaufort County to order. This is August 16th, a Monday. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sarah, I assume we've done the FOIA notifications correctly?
Yes, sir, we have.
Thank you much. Relative to the agenda, I'd like to make a minor change to it in the interest of staff to take the two airport-related items first, then do citizens' comment, and then we'll come back with the Assistant County Administrator's report and then pick up the balance of the agenda. Is there any objection to that? If not, the proposed agenda will be amended to include what I just said. Secondly, is there approval now to approve the amendment as amended?
I'll make that motion, sir.
Okay, well, we got both you and Paul, so Sarah can decide who gets the first and second. But thank you much. Is there any objection to the agenda? Seeing none, it's approved without objection. We also have the approval of the minutes from June 21st. Hopefully you've all read them. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Alice.
minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
York, thank you. Any opposition? Seeing none, that the minutes are approved of June 21st without objection. Let me move now to the two airport-related ones, and let's take the terminal one first, because I think Hayes might have had some kind of a time conflict. So.
Did you do citizen comments yet?
I was going to do that after I did the two airports. Is that John or Hayes? Who's up?
Yes, I can.
John, always good to have you here, sir.
Video?
Yes, please.
First, we're going to show you a little bit of a time-lapse video from the last couple of weekends over at the Hilton Head Island Airport Terminal. So let you watch that, and then we'll move into the next part. So this is video from Saturday, so it's July the 30th and then the first Saturday in August. But this is a Saturday starting in the morning and going through the day. You kind of follow the sunlight. We don't have the times on there, but you'll see the crowds moving through. And this is a view of the TSA checkpoint. And then at the far end, at the top of the screen, you'll see where the rental cars are and then baggage claim. So I showed it to a few people, and they actually thought it was a Rolling Stones reunion tour. It's not. That's your airport. And that's not the busiest day we've had yet.
Probably about another minute left, brother.
Right, it should. You get into the later part of the afternoon, the evening now. It's going to slow down, and then we'll kick off with the August portion here next. If I remember correctly, that day had about 1,380 or so people go through the checkpoint. So double that for the amount of people coming through the terminal. It's August 7th. This is the day we had our largest number of people through the checkpoint ever. And we had 1,418 people go through the checkpoint. So double that or slightly more than double that. But look at the crowds moving through there. And keep in mind, this is the exact same terminal that saw on a peak Saturday previously highs of between maybe 300 and 400 people. We're putting about almost 5 times that many through now in the exact same building. So needless to say, we're going to talk about the terminal project today a little bit.
Looks like it's working, John. Why do we need to spend any more money?
It doesn't actually move that quickly.
It's been a long day.
All right, then of course it slows down at night, and then we finish up. So I've got another PowerPoint that we're going to launch into, but really, again, the point of that is to coin the phrase from almost 20 years ago, a little bit of shock and awe, right? To see what's going on at your airport terminal on the weekends. And it does that really, Saturday's our busiest day, but we see similar crowds like that from Thursday through Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday are a little bit slower, but Thursday through Monday have between 21 and 25 departures each of those days. And the airline numbers have really been increasing. Just to give you a quick snapshot of that while that PowerPoint is loading. Back in 2019, you remember that was our previous record year for passengers going through the terminal. And we had about 233,000 passengers go through the terminal. That's both ways, on airplanes and off airplanes. We just got the numbers from July and last week from all the airlines. And so far, we've had over 235,000 through just the first 7 months of the year. So we're breaking records every month now. This is becoming what some people are calling the new normal, I suppose. But with that new normal, it's also showing us that we need a new and a much larger terminal. When you design a terminal, you go through a process that obviously determines what your needs are, not unlike the facility needs assessment that the county's just gone through. But to put it very simply, every one of those categories was found severely lacking in the current building. So hence the terminal design and moving in to talk about the funding. So I'm going to go through this little presentation here. I like to give, first of all, the vital statistics, and this is really for anybody who may not be intimately familiar with the airport and the terminal, but this is what we are. It's a small non-hub. I like to call it a resort destination, kind of a boutique airport. No international traffic, very small staff, as you can see, 15 staff run the airport. That's county employees. Of course, there's other terminal tenants and the airline employees. The three major airlines there, that's American, Delta, and United. Currently, we're at 144 weekly departures. 2 years ago, we had 67, I believe, and we thought that was pretty busy, so we more than doubled that. Land size, less than 200 acres. It's a very, very small facility. The terminal size, 20,000, is being a little bit generous, but the annual economic impact, that's on the conservative side, a little bit higher than 410 million. We're probably, and it's increasing as we go with these numbers. So that's kind of the vital statistics there. And this we came up with in the spring. We decided that with an airport this busy, with a staff this important, we need to have a good vision and mission. So this is what we want to be when we grow up, the vision. We want to become the best or the most desired destination airport in the country. Okay, visions are usually pretty lofty, maybe hard to achieve, but that's what we're shooting for. And then that mission is kind of how we're going to get there. So I'll let you kind of read that at your leisure. Click on through. That is actually, that last aircraft was a private aircraft that uses the facility. So we do cater to both, obviously, commercial and private aircraft. So that's United Airlines here. A few changes we've made this summer to deal with the congestion that we've had and the traffic that we've seen through the terminal. We've added the Airport Ambassador Program. That's a fancy name for saying that we had a board member put her hand in the air and say, hey, I used to work in airports before, and I was with TSA, so I have a familiarity with working with the traveling public. So we said, that sounds great, and you can work there. So she comes in on Saturdays, and Councilman Rodman's come in and kept her company a little bit too to help out, and I think kind of learn a little bit more and interact with the passengers. But that program's really been very successful because it helps. We found that with the crowds, people need information. Okay, they need knowledge, because if there's a big line, if you remember the pipeline shut down a couple of months ago, nobody really needed gas. They weren't going to run out of fuel, but everybody got in line at the service station because everybody else was in line. And you find that at the airport too. If everyone's in the line for TSA, well, everybody else gets in line. Even if their flight's not for 4 hours, they get in line anyway. So the ambassadors have helped kind of control the information in the terminal and let people know what's going on, which helps them. We also added a board, I think I talked about this before, but that now screening board. We're different than most airports. In most airports, you arrive early, you hustle to get through TSA, and then you go sit in the boarding gate area. Get your cup of coffee, sit down, read the paper. But you can't do that at Hilton. We don't have enough room for you. So we want you to check in at the airline and then wait, just relax. And then when your flight comes up on the now screening board, then get in the TSA line. And that's helped a little bit too, we think. And then exit lane improvements, those are about to open up. I think tomorrow we're going to open those up. But what we're doing is changing the flow of passengers. We used to, in most airports, you'll see
deplaning passengers walk out from the jet bridge, and then the enplaning passengers, the ones boarding, have to wait for them to get off. But there's kind of a cross of traffic, but it's not a disorganized crossing of traffic. We had a little bit of disorganization in a very small facility, so we've changed our routes. We actually cut through another wall of the terminal to make this happen. So this is in addition to some of the other projects we've done. And then the last one, we've got a concessions and a cafe vendor that's under contract, and they'll be starting soon. Probably at the tail end of the season for this year, but we'll be lined up for full service next year, which helps out too, because if folks can relax a little bit, have something to eat and drink, it helps out. So the key projects we're working on now, the parking ramp for the airplanes, the passenger terminal, and the runway and taxiway strengthening projects. The main one we're going to focus on is that passenger terminal. All right. I want to just kind of go back and show you the evolution and of those numbers. You know, where did they come from? So just about 30 months ago, this is where we were. We had a single airline flying to a single city 3 times a day, even with the jet traffic. And then United came in and they added the 3 hubs on a seasonal basis in March of 19. And then in May of 19, Delta came in and they added Atlanta with year-round service. And then in March of 2020, American added DFW, which is Dallas-Fort Worth. They actually brought back the Reagan National flight and LaGuardia as well. Plus they added a flight to Chicago. And then this year they brought Boston in. And then of course on the next one, you'll see United's big push where they added those point-to-point flights. So we ended up going within 30 months, actually about 25 months, we went from a single airline flying to one city 3 times a day to all 3 major network carriers flying to 16 different cities, 4 of them served by multiple airlines with 144 weekly flights. So if I had a mic, I guess I could drop it, but it's been extremely busy, okay? And the numbers show that. But with those numbers comes that crowding that we're talking about, and thus the need to improve that terminal. This was something interesting. I don't know who've used FlightAware or any of the software. You can see what kind of airplanes are up in the air at any given time. But what's interesting about this is I click on this every day to see what's going on, but this is a screenshot of just a snapshot in time, 2:40 p.m. on that day. And all the aircraft that are either blue or green are aircraft that are either coming to Hilton Head Island Airport or departing. And that represents probably a couple of private aircraft there to highlighted, but most of those are commercial. So there's about 8 or 9 commercial aircraft at that moment in time on that afternoon, either departing or coming to Hilton Head Island Airport. It used to be 1, so it's extremely busy. It also goes to show how many aircraft are in the air at any given time, which frightens some people. Seems to work out. All right, this is an area of the terminal as it exists today. You can see how big one regional jet is sitting there. We have 3 that sit there normally. All right, if you click to the next one, that represents kind of the old hold room that we say. And then if you click the next one, this shows the modular. That's the modular building we added 2 years ago. That altogether results in about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet of hold room space. The study that we did to design the new terminal says that we need about 7,200 square feet of hold room space for 3 gates. So we're at about 25 to 3,000 square feet. So definitely lagging behind on that one. And this just shows you that kind of tan is the existing terminal. And then on the next one, it'll show you that's what the new terminal footprint will look like. And kind of that hatched area off to the left is the new ramp. So that's what the project will look like when it's completed. All right, we'll move to the next. And then there's that ramp area that was mentioned. Sorry? Oh, no, you're fine. All right, so let's look at the terminal. Some of you may have seen some of these before, but I do like to show these off. This is what the new building is going to look like. There's the outside. We'll have 4 lanes of traffic that can move through, vehicular traffic. That innermost lane closest to the building has covered drop-off for the entire length of the facility. Now moving along, we'll show some of the interior. This is, if you were to walk in the building now, where the time-lapse video was showing in the TSAQ area, that's kind of this area here, but this is turnaround looking back out the front doors. This is kind of the grand hall that will be made when the building is renovated and expanded. Much more room, obviously. Then moving on, this is what the ticketing area will look like. It's going to be in generally the same area, but a lot more square footage in that ticketing. We'll show, I think, a view of the whole room. So this is moving, once these people exited the TSA screening line, which will be 2 lines with new equipment instead of 1 line with old equipment, which is what we have now. They move up into the boarding gate area, and that's what that boarding gate area looks like. There's a variety of seating types there, all of which are state-of-the-art with charging stations. Some of them are, desktop seating so folks can work on computers and things like that as they're waiting. And let's see, next one shows, this is baggage claim, and then the rental car area is off to the left. Obviously much expanded from what's there currently. If you've been there and seen the baggage claim now, it's basically a baggage drop where some holes in the wall open up and your bags get tossed out on the floor. This is what you expect in an airport, especially an airport like Hilton Head Island, where we've got golf clubs and folks who are going on vacation. They don't want their items dropped on the floor. And that's your airport there, and that concludes my formal presentation. Now what I'd like to do after showing all those images is just again emphasize the need for the terminal, the numbers that we're seeing, and the fact that, my opinion, that I really don't think those numbers are going to decrease. They'll definitely drop a little bit as the season tails off, but I think as you've heard from other folks, that season is getting longer and longer, and the off season is getting smaller and smaller. So we expect to see those numbers stay pretty high through at least October. But in the past couple of years, they've been moving into November as well. So the season's getting longer. And so as we've talked about as well before, this is not an inexpensive project. It's a big, audacious project, one that's definitely needed in order to serve the people on Hilton Head Island and Beaufort County the way we should be serving them. This is a clientele that's coming here to visit the #1 island in the country year after year. Condé Nast ranks it #1, and so we need to provide the arrival and departure experience that these folks deserve. The price tag of this is a big one, and I think the last numbers that we've mentioned, I think numbers that have been in the packet, were around the $37.5 million mark. That was based on the kind of the pre-design estimates. Those numbers go up. The size of the building has gone up as well as these needs, as the report came out, the needs were more fully vetted. And so that size of the building now is up around 62,000 square feet as compared to somewhere between 18 and 20,000 square feet now. And the price tag is going to be all in with design, site work, and contingencies is going to be closer to the $50 million mark, which for that square footage is something that's kind of expected. Now, the funding package that's been identified so far, as I think I've briefed as well, is we do have FAA participation to the tune of $20 million. That's the maximum amount that the FAA can pledge for a terminal at any airport. It has nothing to do with the size. That's a max that a Charlotte or an Atlanta would get as well. So we're maxing that out, which is great. And then, of course, after that, there's a state contribution from aeronautics, and that would be 5% of that $20 million, which is about just over $1 million. And then after that, we've got a bit of a delta that we need to talk about. So that's where the local and the alternate forms of funding come into play. And that's, I think, where Hayes is going to pick it up here for a moment to talk about some ideas we had there.
Yeah, John, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was told on my last presentation that nobody could hear me very well, so I'm trying to come in via telephone. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so as John said, we're looking at around $50 million for the airport, and this is not a terribly complicated thing, but we're looking at every avenue that we possibly can. Obviously, you said that we have FAA support, so that's going to be around $20 million. The county feels and the administration feels that we're probably going to be able to fund around $20 million without raising a debt millage, and we're in discussions with our debt council to try and do that. We're going to be looking at seeking additional $10 to $12 million in other funding sources, but the overall project is John has done a tremendous job getting this together and getting this plan and moving it forward, and we don't want to lose that momentum. I like the reunion tour of the Rolling Stones, but this is everybody's first impression of Beaufort, and we want Beaufort County to be portrayed in a very positive light when people step off that plane. And I really think this plan is going to be a tremendous impact to this county financially as a whole. And so my overall goal is to keep it moving, and I'm looking to having a detailed funding sources for you in the next September meeting, and I will be working on that diligently. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Hayes or John?
Hi.
Brian? Brian?
I like to think that one of the reasons the season seems to be getting longer is the improvement for air services to Hilton Head Island. I think that has the effect of extending, making shorter trips seem more accessible to people, and it's not something they have to plan 10 or 15 days out of their summer to get here. They can do it on a long weekend or half of a week. And so I absolutely am convinced that the need for these kind of improvements. I think that we absolutely need to participate. But Hayes, when you're looking at funding sources, I think the primary beneficiary of these improvements are certainly the town of Hilton Head, and so they need to really step up when this whole thing comes together. And I expect to see major contributions from their funding sources. Thank you.
Yes, sir, I agree.
Other comments? Chris?
Thank you. I've got two, if I might. But first of all, great presentation. I think it's absolutely a worthwhile project, and I think it's exciting for the county. Questions being, number one, we heard a lot about the inside of the facility and the terminal and things like that. Tying it back to an issue that a constituent of mine had with the outside and the parking lot, is there any structural changes going to happen there? What does that need to look like, particularly around lighting? So that's the first question. And the second question was for Hayes. And I know that this is a really difficult thing to kind of pin down, but based on the economic driver of the airport and what it's providing to the county, do we have any sort of sense as far as what sort of tax revenue that drives and where it drives? And the reason why I'm asking is, if we're going to ask the taxpayers to kick in somehow 29 million, what's the return that the average taxpayer is going to see? And I know that that's a hard question, but I'm just curious.
Okay, well, I can start out with the site question, maybe part of the tax revenue question for you. With the site, as I mentioned, that price tag, that includes everything, including site improvements. So with that, with the terminal, with the expansion, it's actually going to move out into the existing drive lanes, which pushes those 4 drive lanes I showed you out into the existing parking lot. So that will cause a need for the parking lot to be renovated. There are a lot of trees out there. It is Hilton Head Island, so we won't be able to renovate everything in the parking lot, but to the extent that we can, we will. And then there'll be additional parking to the right as you enter the facility. Currently, there's kind of the loop road that goes through, and the parking is all on the left. There'll be new parking over on the right-hand side. So we'll probably have a net gain of parking, not too many, but we'll have a net gain of parking. But it's kind of an interesting topic, and we're going to study the parking a little bit more, because since we are a heavy origination destination airport, we've got a lot of rental car traffic. We've got a lot of pickup and drop off traffic. We do fill the parking lot with residents who leave their cars there, but I don't know necessarily if we need 1,000 parking spots. We might only need marginally more than what we have now. So we are continuing to look at that and see what that real number is. And as far as the lighting goes, hopefully during this project, we will have some tree trimming and that sort of thing that will help let some of the lights shine, because there are lights that are throughout the whole parking facility. Some of them are in the midst of tree limbs, so it's a little bit of a challenge to have some of that work done sometimes on Hilton Head, but we're continuing to move on that. But Palmetto Electric is our source for that, so they usually do pretty well on keeping up with maintenance. And then transitioning over to the tax revenue, I know with the economic impact study that was done from the state, I guess it was about 1.5 years ago, we got an update to that. And the contribution from the airport, at least on the state level, as far as revenues goes, was, I believe it was about 16.5 or $17 million annually for tax revenues. As far as locally, I'm not exactly sure, but I know on the state side, that's what it looks like.
Right. That's good information. I would expect that most of that would be local, or a large chunk anyway. So theoretically, this payback period would be relatively short. The only other comment I'll make is if you could look at creative ways to increase the lighting in the parking lot, we would definitely appreciate it.
Okay, any other comments? Anybody on the line? Let me offer just one or two. Back when I first started looking at this beginning of the summer, one of the problems I had with the congestion out the door was the fact that two of the airlines were kind of double booking their gates. And I think John probably called them to task, and they seem to have that behind them, and so it is flowing much better now, even though the numbers have gone up. Secondly, John probably shouldn't let me loose in the airport by myself. But in any event, it is kind of interesting if you look at the numbers that John put up of the 16 cities that we're flying to, and you look at what's flying into Myrtle Beach and into Savannah, and you could argue that anybody that's not flying into one of those two cities would be unlikely to fly here. That only really leaves about 4 cities that we're missing in the eastern United States, and that would be Detroit, Baltimore, Nashville, and one other, I forgot what it was. Oh, Detroit. So
New Orleans.
No, well, for you, we might do New Orleans. It's kind of interesting if you look at the numbers and play around with the back of the envelope of the kind of the passengers. My calculation says we could very well be at about 1 million passengers a year. And if you take a look at the economic value that John described, and even call the incremental increasing at half the amount, you still start coming up to about $1 billion of economic value. So we're sharing that with Hilton Head. I think they're clearly going to come in. I think we'll probably get into discussions about what's a fair share. So how much for ourselves, how much for them. John's going to get some money from operations, rental cars, and parking and things like that. So I think we're all can look forward to seeing what that plan looks like. I have suggested to the town that we have to have some discussion with them because being a resort airport, as John described it, we don't want to get to the point that we have so many flights that we're causing problems with the local residents. And so there may be a sweet spot in there about how far we want to go. And also, what times of day we want to operate, because it's kind of interesting. If you look at the schedules, there's like 2 out in the morning, then there's a couple hours, and then there's all these folks that are coming, which really want to come midday because that's when the visitors would logically connect. And then you get at the end of the day, you get a couple hours that are kind of free, and then you end up with a couple late night arrivals. So I'm sure you'll have some interesting discussions on how that goes. But in any event, John, we appreciate you and the staff and Hayes, and we look forward to what happens next. While you're up there, you want to take care of the FAA grant that was number 7 on the agenda?
Absolutely, yes. With great pleasure, I'll let you know that we did receive FAA Grant 47 a couple of weeks ago, and Eric did sign that grant so that we could accept it in a timely manner because the FAA does put a pretty tight turnaround on those. But that grant covers, if you remember, I've been in front of you before talking about the new ARF vehicle, Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Vehicle, as well as a design and bidding services for taxiway and runway strengthening project. So this grant will 100% fund both of those projects. So it's a non-COVID related grant, but the 100% is part of COVID relief. So it's still a standard airport improvement program grant, but it's funded at 100%, so neither the state nor the airport will have to contribute to that. So I think the item that's on the agenda is just a resolution authorizing Eric to accept that grant.
This is kind of an after the fact for 100% grant approved. Look for a motion on that.
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Subject to a question, though. I'm going to just go to county council for approval of the resolution, or is our committee enough?
I don't know. I assume it probably goes to council. I'll leave it to legal.
Yes.
They're nodding their head yes, Brian, so I guess.
Okay, that sounds good. Then my motion stands.
Okay, and it was a second from, was it York?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, this stands approved without objection. That now takes us to citizen comment. Yes, sure.
Ask John before you leave.
Sure.
I do support you and what you're doing, and I like what you're doing.
Thank you.
I think the airport has come a long ways, and we got to give a lot of that to you and your leadership. I like the economic impact number that you're showing. I'd like to say almost $500 million impact. But I would love for you to highlight total employees from the airport other than the 15, because I think, we need to know exactly how many people with TSA and others that the airport is really impacting, employing and stuff. So,
Sure.
You could do that. I sure appreciate it and stuff. And
I can tell you from that same economic impact report that the state did for us, that number of employees, and of course they do primary, secondary, and tertiary. That number is I think it was in the 1,300 range. So it's that the 15 number was to just show you that there are very few county staff who are delivering a pretty heavy load over there. But just so they get a pat on the back, like we had our ARF officer here a couple of months ago to be highlighted. So staff is working real hard over there, but there are a lot of other jobs that result from the airport. You're correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. We appreciate you. Citizen comment. Carol Crutchfield, I believe, is here to speak to us. Sorry to detain you for a few minutes.
That's okay.
Good to have you with us.
Good to
Tell us who you are and what you want us to do.
I'm here as a private citizen today, and I got a handout, and I don't think I have quite enough packets, but I'll give out one when I am done talking, if you don't mind.
That'll be fine. And Sarah, if you give some to Sarah, she'll.
I will get one to Sarah by email probably. I don't know who wants to share.
Go ahead, I'll give one to Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm Carol Crutchfield, and I'm here as a private citizen. Many of you know me because of my professional role, but I'm here to talk about what was item number 8. I'm not sure what number it is now on your agenda. And I'm going to put this mouse down. My husband and I have lived on King George Road since January of 1989, 32 plus years. The developer of Vertier View neighborhood, A.E. Anthony, and his Greater Carolina Corporation promised a lot to the owners and delivered little of those promises, including improving the drainage and paving the roads in phase 2 of the neighborhood. The information in your packet today is incomplete. I first sought guidance from the county in September of 2012 and was basically told by Eric Klatt at that time that no one owned the roads. I have an email from Mr. Klatt in your handout. Mr. Anthony never turned the roads over to the HOA ownership, as it implies in your packet, and I was on the HOA board at the time. When Mr. Anthony died, the roadways were not accounted for in his will. Only the unsold lots were deeded to his heirs. My attempts at contacting the heirs went nowhere, no response. So basically, as far as I can tell, since that time, no one owns the roads. The neighborhood has 2 concerns: stormwater control and the degrading condition of the entrance, which is flanked by 2 commercial properties owned by the same person. One is under personal ownership, the other a business name. However, both properties are operating as commercial. One a grocery store with a food truck, the other is rental residential with campers. The 18-wheelers that come to make deliveries are destroying the road, which was not designed for those loads. The drainage from both enterprises are not constrained to their property and contribute to the inadequate drainage system that this developer was allowed to get by with. Mr. Anthony did not even comply with orders by OCRM to fill in a pond illegally dug in the wetlands. Drainage on Highway 46, May River Road properties, and housing developments on Pritchard Farms Road also contribute to the drainage issues. And these too were allowed by the county to proceed without adequate stormwater. Only the Dollar General on the corner appears to have been required to manage their water. During our last big storm, my grandson and I were out digging trenches to get water flowing away from the property, my property, and others. It states in your narrative that the Public Works Director, I know.
Go ahead and take an extra minute and finish.
Okay, if you don't mind, I appreciate it, and I'll tell you why. It states in your narrative that Public Works Director has concerns associated with road acceptance. This neighborhood has concerns about what happens if you do not. You will be turning your back on a known problem and offering no solution. Oh well. In the minutes in your packet, you approved $75,000 for digital marketing. That same amount of money could impact 80-plus homeowners. The people of this neighborhood are all working-class folks. They mow your lawns, they lay your tile, they build the businesses that keep this county growing. They do not have the luxury like I do to be flexible in their work schedules to meet in front of you and plead their case. And most of them do not even know this meeting is occurring, as there was no notice sent to anyone who signed the petition. My persistence with staff is the only reason that I stand before you today. I beg you to seriously look into this issue and look at the greater issues of stormwater control in this area before you make a decision. I then request that you approve this road acceptance, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Carol. That would then take us timely-wise to that particular item, which is 8 on the agenda, which has to do with the acceptance of King George Road. And Jared, you want to tell us about that?
Sure.
Then I'll come back to your report.
That's great. So King George Road is a private road. It's approximately 900 feet. It's in the Vergeer View subdivision in off of 46 in Bluffton, or just outside of Bluffton. As mentioned, the association was initially incorporated in the 80s and 85, and then dissolved in 1992. Since the HOA was dissolved, the roads have deteriorated with no means to repair. Public Works Director Neil Desai has visited the site and came up with some cost estimates based off the field observation of approximately $70,000, $20,000 associated with storm drains, and $50,000 associated with road improvements, most specifically at the beginning of the road as mentioned. So in policy documents, policy statements 15 and 17 as requirements for accepting public roads, it is the requirement of property owners or developer or HOA that the road be in standard working condition prior to being accepted by the county. So as of this time, it is in the staff's opinion that the road is not in those standards as specified in policy statements 15 and 17. And the staff's recommendation would be that it be not recommended into acceptance. Also, to note, as part of the CPC traffic plan, they do denote 2 alternatives for construction of dirt roads, or in this case, of paper roads to enter. One is of which the adjoining property owners may create a special tax district in keeping with county guidelines for the construction or improvement, or also the property owners themselves meeting with the engineering and construction firms to accomplish this work prior to its events. So those are alternatives that are outlaid for opportunities such as this.
Okay, let me open up for comments and questions from council. Chris?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jared, can you go over the 2 options that are currently available to them? I heard the one with the special tax district, but I kind of lost you on the other.
The second one is basically that we come together, the property owners, and perform the work themselves. The tax district is basically the county would perform that work, and under basically the benefiting properties would pay for that work over, I believe it's a 20-year time loan, and that loan will be extended for the county to perform those services to perform that work. The other one is basically they do it themselves.
Alice?
I had a question. I know you can't give an exact number, but if we had a special tax district Do you have any idea, based on the number of landowners, how much it would be per year?
I don't have that information. I'm definitely get that information and provide it back. But I don't have that available at this time.
I think that would be good to know. I can't tell exactly how many homeowners there are. It doesn't look like there's too many.
I bet you Carol would know.
Carol, do you know how many landowners there are?
There, in the whole neighborhood, there are about 8. There are only 8 property owners whose property touches that, but that is the entrance to the entire development.
So special tax, this is a question for you. A special tax district, would it be those 8 or would it need to be all of them in the, how would you do that, Jerry? What would you recommend?
I'm going to assume that everybody who benefits from the use of that road. So if there's only 8 there, obviously they have a great benefit, but those that access that road would also have a benefit. So I would make the assumption that it would be the full subdivision.
Okay. That would be good, I think, information before we take action to have. Mr. Chairman?
Other comments?
Jared, the only question I've got, and obviously I know exactly where this is actually my district, so I've been back there recently. But you're looking to only add King George Road as a county road. What about the other roads in the neighborhood, or how's that work out? Who's maintaining the other roads right now, or how's the rest of the neighborhood set up?
The petition was King George, so it did not include, nor the cost include for the other roads. And we have some subdivisions as such, as this, where we own the main road, or somewhere we own all the roads, just depending on how those subdivisions came to be.
If I might.
Brian, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm a little concerned that no notice of this discussion was sent to the people who had sent a petition. And I'm, while I have to be completely upfront that I intend to vote against this measure because I think we need to preserve our policy in 17, I still think it's important that we provide the members of the public who are impacted by our decision for the right to come and discuss that with us. And so I would hope that we could delay this until such time as all the people who signed the petition are notified of the pending discussion.
Other comments or inputs?
Yeah.
Paul?
I couldn't understand the vast majority of what Jared said, so I don't know what his presentation was. But I do, based on the comments of some of the councilmen, I understand that there's an option for a special tax district. That I do understand, thanks to you all. But if this is a private road that wants to be brought into the system, I'm guessing that around the county there are a lot of roads that would like to be brought into the system, and I don't know how you go about prioritizing. I mean, is it the first one who steps up to the plate gets consideration, the second, third? I mean, there seems to me there ought to be some kind of process for this. And I haven't heard anything, even though I didn't hear almost anything that Jared said. I heard it, it just didn't I couldn't understand any of it. There ought to be some kind of process to look at the different roads that would like to come into the system and figure out some way to prioritize them.
Anybody else online?
Mr. Chairman.
York?
No, go ahead.
And Joe?
Somebody else talking. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and I do know that there's a lot of private road that want to come into the county system. I do have a problem with developers not owning up to their responsibilities. I do have a problem with that. I don't know how we can fix that, but this is several times the county has actually been asked to take over very important roads in the community, and the developers really didn't contribute, and they did not bring the roads up to standard or kept up to their obligations. So I have a concern about that. The other thing is that really disturbs me now is it seems that the entrance here is going into a residential area, but you got an 18-wheeler coming in there. I mean, that should not even be allowed, but I don't know how you put it into something like that as well. But, so those are my comments at this time, so.
Okay. Not seeing other comments, let me weigh in on this. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, go.
Yes, 3 questions. Question number 1, is King George Road a dirt road or a paved road? I couldn't hear you. It is paved?
It is paved.
Is Mary B. Court a paved road?
That I do not know. I personally haven't been to the road.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Carol's saying it's paved.
All right, so these are paved roads, but they are privately owned at this point in time. Okay, so that's problem number 1. Number 2, is there an HOA association that exists?
Carol's shaking her head no.
No one owns the roads, and no, there is no HOA.
No HOV or no homeowners, and nobody owns the roads.
Okay, and did she say how many houses would be affected by this?
I heard 80.
Approximately 80. I didn't do a count.
Yeah.
Approximately 80 houses?
No, not 80, 8.
No, 80.
8.
Well, 8 is
8 just for King George Road. That's the 2, 4. I see 6
I see what
on
it is.
the chart.
There are approximately 30 lots in that subdivision.
Okay.
Just ballparking it, I don't know exactly, but my recollection is about 29 or 30.
All right. But my comment is that we're going to have to follow the process and procedure of having a private road turned over to the county system. Just us doing this doesn't, we're using taxpayer dollars inappropriately.
Eric, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm probably sure. I don't know that I want to, but we have a situation here that we probably, to Councilmember Flewellen's suggestion, we probably need to hold action on this until we have a chance to do some additional research. And I can talk with Jared and Patty Wilson to see what has been done on this, to research the right-of-way, to see who owns that. Someone does own that strip of land, not sure who, but we can try to track that down and bring this back for you all to consider at a later date if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I don't sense.
Interject just one quick thought for Carol. Somebody does own this property, and as has happened in the past, occasionally these kinds of things, the taxes don't get paid, and they go up to tax sale, and somebody would buy them for a very small amount of money. And so then a new homeowner association could be formed to take up the cost of repair and maintenance of that, and would get the property for a very minimal amount of taxes due, which is probably not more than $100 a year. So, you need to make sure you monitor the delinquent tax sale list to see if this property comes up.
Okay, 2 things. One, I don't sense any objection to carrying this over to the next meeting to give staff an opportunity to take a look at it. And secondly, I think the tax district may be a viable option for you. And let me describe how that works as I understand them. And it would apply to either of the alternatives that Jared mentioned, whether they did it on their own or the county did it. But essentially, a group of residents can draw a proposed tax district to include what they want to. So it could be the 8 that are on the road. It could be whatever you talked about, the 80 that potentially use the road. You can even include the 2 businesses that are on the corner. And then what you do is you have to get, I think it's 15% to sign a petition to come to county council to conduct an election to have a tax district, and then it takes a 50% vote of those who are voting or who are property owners who elect to vote to put it in place. And once it's in place, then the county would actually collect the money. If it owned the road, they would obviously keep it themselves. If you all were doing it on your own, they would pay the money to you. So in any event, I think you probably want to get a little more educated on the tax district, but I think that certainly may turn out to be a viable option for you. So we'll carry this over to the next meeting, if that's okay with. I don't see any objection to that. Thank you for being with us. Okay, that takes us to Jared, your report. I apologize for moving it around.
That's all right, no problem. So just to go over several items of things that are up and coming, not necessarily things of action, but just things to take note of and make you aware of. So from transportation, US 278, the public comment period remains open until Sunday, August 22nd. So individuals can still submit written comments to through their website at www.stv278corridor.com/public-hearing. So you can make those comments there. Federal funding and the TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan. Through the process, been working with LATS and Stephanie Rossi over there as far as getting projects funded. It's an interesting process that in order to be federally funded, you have to show up on the local MTO Transportation Improvement Plan, and then that gets forwarded onto the South Carolina State Transportation Infrastructure Plan. The only two projects currently that Beaufort County has on the tip are the 278 Corridor Project and the Cross Island Parkway Conversion Project. So trying to coordinate with FLAPS and how we can set our projects up a little bit better such that our local projects can be on the tip in order to raise our hand for federal funding. So we're working through that process currently in hopes to get some of our known projects that have maybe not all the funding set up, but at least funding for the design set up so that they can make it to that list for future federal funding opportunities. Facility, and if there's any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to interject and I'll take any questions. Facilities management, our boat landing master plan RFQ has been out and we've received solicitations. Our evaluation team is working with the highest proposer to get a proposal and fee together such that we can bring that to you here shortly. Our hope is that we'll have that ready to bring to September PFC, and that will take a look at all of our boat landings, what we plan to do to assess the current conditions, what improvements need to be made, do we have the right number of boat landings, should we add more, should we reduce, all that will be included in that master plan. Facilities master plan, I believe somebody's already made mention of this, but we have a special workshop on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So we'll have that discussion there. As far as capital projects are concerned, our EMS Fire Station 31, Red Roof there at the roundabout at 46. That project is substantially complete and we had no change orders in the process. We're currently waiting on the CEO from the town of Bluffton with only punch list items remaining. And the grand opening event is scheduled for early September. The Bluffton Library is also substantially complete, and again waiting on a scheduled opening or plan to have a scheduled opening in September. As far as solid waste and recycling list, we're continuing to work on our sustainability campus plans. Right now, staff is continuing to work with our consultant in reviewing potential site locations for the campus. And we'll be talking about that. We'll touch on that as well at our workshop on Thursday, and then more to follow that September PFC update. As far as public works is concerned, the disaster recovery, we're continuing to work through our recovery function preparations as we prepare for our current hurricane season that we are in. We've met with our debris management and monitoring contractors and have everything prepared as far as that's concerned. Fleet services, just want to kind of give you an update. And I have 3 slides, but Sarah, I don't know that we need to bring those up. Just I'll talk through it. If you have it right there, you can bring it up. So just want to let you know what we have going on in fleet services. We have some pretty big changes this year and into the coming years. So starting this past year, as it was being prepared, as normal, we take capital requests in the springtime for equipment that's needed by each of the departments. We actually, what we're calling phase 1, took those capital requests and put those on hold, and actually, instead of paying for that out of our normal funding budget, we were able to cover those costs with some of the surplus that was already there from our current budget. So those costs, instead of rolling into our general fund this year, we were able to meet those capital requests. We are also looked at the life cycle replacement plan, and we're trying to identify underutilized vehicles and replacement and/or needs. And by that, what I'm talking about, we had vehicles where there was a need in one department that we could use and move a vehicle to another department, and we're able to do that in a couple different places. And also, we had some ambulances that were in need, but we probably hold off a year or so. So we moved ambulances around high-use areas to areas where they're not used as much. So able to extend the life of some of our vehicles through that plan. In phase 2, again, we're looking to, next slide, we're looking to reallocate some of those underutilized vehicles and creating a more profound motor pool program. So we have some departments that have full-time vehicles where there's not necessarily a full-time need. So our goal is to right-size our fleet. One thing to make mention is over the last 10 years, our workforce has remained approximately the same size, but our equipment and vehicles has doubled. So we want to reevaluate that and see if we really do need all the equipment and vehicles, and if there's opportunity to downsize our fleet and better utilize the fleet. That's our intentions. We're also looking at creating a 5-year budget plan to produce a healthier fleet. So have a program such that is capitalized year in and year out based off that life cycle of the vehicle. So if it has a 4-year or a 7-year life cycle, that'll get incorporated into a plan, and we'll update that every year, but have a 5-year plan ahead as we move forward. And then lastly, phase 3 to it is we're also looking at electric vehicles and what that could look like. There's a lot of talk in the industry and just at large. Even our president has put some pretty high marks on the wall, so we thought it was only fitting for us to do the same. So we're looking at that. We actually have an RFP out right now that is due back September 20th for a consultant to help us with this effort. As we started doing research, we quickly realized that there's a lot to learn about this space and that an expert would be needed to help us facilitate this. So we're going through that process, and hopefully that expert consultant will be able to help us identify not only what's needed as far as vehicles and the charging equipment, but what that looks like throughout our campus and potentially our community and region countywide. So again, a lot of exciting stuff in fleet, but just wanted to kind of point that one out especially. A few other items to make mention of. Miscellaneous items is a climate resilience plan. As we start working on these initiatives as far as solid waste, the sustainability campus, and the electric vehicles we just mentioned, even energy savings and facilities, and our stormwater Soloco standards, we recognize that there was something worthwhile, that we all realized that these are goals that made sense, but we didn't recognize that there was a common theme that were connecting these. As we started looking for federal funds, it was apparent that this climate resiliency may be that linking message and that linking theme. So We looked at what other communities have done, and there are a few examples out there. So it's something that we as staff are going to spend some time and effort on, and we'll be presenting more to you all about that as we start moving down that path. But it definitely started to answer why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Sometimes dollars and cents aren't the only thing that matter, but being a good steward for our environment means a lot as well. So that'll be something we're working on and bringing forward to you here in the future. Recently, several members attended the South Carolina Associations for Counties annual meeting down in Hilton Head 2 weeks ago. There was a couple staff members as well as a couple council members that were there. There were a lot of good presentations and speakers on a host of subjects ranging from Office of Resilience to broadband, to ARPA, and to what other counties are doing with their ARPA funds. So we're going to use the information gained as well as the contacts made and start exercising those contacts and reaching out to those folks to see to help provide advice and counsel as we are doing the same thing on our plans. And as mentioned with ARPA, staff is working on a project list of proposed ARPA expenditures that we are preparing and plan to present to committee here, PXD committee in September. And lastly, I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but lastly, one important note is capital improvement project coordinator. So this is a newly created position under capital projects that will help us better stimulate, manage, and plan for our capital projects countywide. I'm proud to say that Brittany Fields from our engineering office was recently promoted to this new position. And we're excited. We hope that this program, we're going to be working closely with finance in our budget process, and have our ultimate goal is that we have a 5-year budget plan of CIP projects that give us good visibility of what's coming ahead of us so that we can plan the funding requirements needed and have that as a rolling list. So as we tackle 1 year, we add another year to the mix and continue that 5-year plan so we have a good path forward. So Brittany, I'd gladly welcome you, and I don't know that you need an introduction, but if you'd like to say anything, we're excited that you're here.
Thank you, Jared. Any comments or questions for Jared from council? Don't see any hands.
Was Brittany going to speak?
Was Brittany going to speak?
Oh, no, I have nothing to say. Thank you, Jared. I look forward to the new role.
You're welcome to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just 3 things to follow up on Jared's report. He's pointed out that we're not in the state and federal pipeline for several of the projects that we might, and I don't know how that happened 2 or 3 years ago, but in any event, we're playing catch up because there's some of the federal funds coming forward. We need to have that in place in order to qualify for those. We're also looking probably in the near future for committee to get some kind of an update from people who are very familiar with what may or may not be in the infrastructure bill, and I think that will be helpful for us. And lastly, on the looking at the work that was done for our facilities. I won't be with you on Thursday. I've got some other commitments, but I've asked York if he would take some leadership as vice chair in looking at that whole issue. It's a very comprehensive list. I envision that we're probably going to have several discussions on it, and in particular, I think we'll get down to whether it's 3 years or 5 years, some kind of a funding plan for the high priority items. So we'll move on unless somebody has something else for Jared. That takes us lastly to item number 10 on the, which is the 170 improvements. Jared, if you would.
Sure. So 170, we've talked about this here recently, but just to give you an update on where we are and what's going on. So we have already commissioned, committee and council has approved to get started on near-term projects, which is approximately $3 million worth of construction projects at 5 locations. One of which we've already taken care of at SC 462 and SC 170. AECOM was the one who did the master plan or the access management study and has duly commissioned to help us with the short-term improvement projects. They recently gave a presentation last week at Jasper County, of which they asked us to attend a joint workshop. So myself and Chairman Gordon with the CTC and Chairman Rodman of CT or PFC, we all went to Jasper County and had a workshop. It was a great presentation that AECOM gave about the project overall. And from that discussion and workshop, Jasper County asked, they were definitely for the project and interested in helping the county and facilitate our short-term project as recommended by AECOM, and suggested that we propose an IGA arrangement of some measure. So with that, staff is working to develop that, and we'll be sending that over with their staff to come up with an arrangement so that we can cost share on that project and what those roles would look like. Currently, what we're looking at is potentially a cost share of the county taking on the larger lead to make sure the project gets done, up to $1.5 million, and Jasper County potentially $1 million, and then Hardyville for $500,000. So we're working through that and hope to send that to Jasper County for their review as we work with PFC and get it through our council concurrently. In addition to that, on SB 170, we've been coordinating with DOT. They have a paving project in the pipeline that would pave 278 and the ramps, all four of the ramps that take you from 170 on the 278. That's something that potentially can be integrated into the work that we're looking to do, which would expedite their project and also add to our project, such that there's economies of scale in that. So they're not necessarily contributing to the near-term projects, but in doing so and adding their work, we'll be able to get a better bang for our buck as far as what we put out to bid and the size and scope of the construction project. So that's just a little bit about where we are, and gladly take any questions.
Okay. Just a little more background. We've talked about this in the past, but basically Latz had commissioned a study some time ago and identified near-term, medium-term, and long-term improvements that were required on this. And we're talking about the section on 170 from 278 up to 462, about 4.5 miles. And so that led us to get out in front of this, and you all approved the getting on with the design piece, which I think was around $200,000. And that's led to what Jared just described as a potential funding project to get that piece done once it's designed. And I think with the SCDOT money coming into play, there'd be some economies of scale. So for us today, I think what's on the table is a recommendation to approve $1.5 million from impact fees for the construction of that section that we're talking about. Clearly, Jasper is in there. And as far as Hardyville, we don't know for sure, but they have indicated that they feel that it's probably time for them to be contributing something, an amount to be determined. So let me first open it up for questions and discussions, and then we'll get on with the motion. Brian?
You knew that was coming, I guess.
I could see it coming.
Describe for me again the section of road you're talking about.
Yeah, this is a section, if you're looking at 170 between 278 and 462, which is, of course, where the ACES school is, that intersection, 462. It's very dangerous. We'll continue to have accidents there. I think it's probably
between 278 and 462. It ends its terminus is pretty close to Old Field, then, and the other end is the Highway 278 on ramps. Is that right?
I think so, yes. Joe's nodding his head.
Right. And, okay, I think I'm with you on this, Stu. Okay. I know I know that, half the road is in Jasper County, but I understand that it is predominantly Beaufort County residents who are traveling back and forth to Bluffton and Hilton Head who are using both sides of the roadway. And so I think this is equitable and fair, and I'll make the motion, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and Mark second. Open it up for further discussion. Two other comments that I would make. One is, I think this can be the forerunner of some good discussions with Jasper about how we do that common road. And secondly, given that many of us think it's maybe the most pressing requirement we have, I think this lends itself to look at, what's in kind of the medium-term plan, and is there some of that we ought to be pulling forward? And it could very well be, if we're doing some of that design, maybe that's the road that is our first choice if we get infrastructure funds or some of the state funds. So,
yeah.
Okay, other comments? Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have an estimate of when Hardyville is going to make a decision as far as when or if they're going to contribute?
We don't, in the sense that when we were talking to Jasper, they said they would take the lead in talking to Hardyville rather than us doing it directly. So I assume the sooner rather than later. I just don't know, Chris.
But Jasper is totally committed.
Well, they still have to go there through their council, just like we have to go through ours, but I think we have a head nod. Anybody else? Okay. Not seeing any other comments. We got a motion and a second. Are there any objections to this, which would then go on to council, both from the dollar amount and from the IGA? Seeing none, is there any objection? Seeing none, this stands approved without objection. Are there any, by the way, our agenda notes a couple of vacancies that we have, and I assume that clerk's office will keep us appraised as to where those are and need to fill them out. And looks like Eric has something else for us.
Yeah, just one point of a reminder. On Thursday, there will be a hybrid workshop. Begins at 2 o'clock. There's going to be 4 topics of discussion during that workshop. The first one we have allocated an hour for, and that is to hear from Creech and Associates on the results of the facilities master plan. Then from that, for the next 30 minutes, we hope that you will hear and make recommendations to us on the county-owned property inventory that you all ask us to study, with recommendations for which properties we should proceed to sell. Third will be the boat landing ownership piece and maintenance, and one pier that we maintain but we do not own off of Jenkins Island. You'll hear that discussion as well for about 30 minutes. And then finally, we're going to need some direction from county council on staff continuing to maintain rec facilities around the county, parks and recreation facilities around the county that we do not have any ownership interest in. So we'll need to have some discussion and direction on that as well. We get a lot of those requests, and I'm reluctant to dedicate county resources that are already tight to improve properties that are not in our ownership, and we will present information to you on that and ask for your guidance on how to proceed at the staff level. So those are the 4 items. Hopefully we'll be done around 4:30, depending on the length of the discussion of each.
Good.
Chairman, one final item. I did a double check on their view. There are 60 lots in the subdivision altogether.
60 lots, okay. 60 lots, okay. York, yes, sir.
Yeah, just before we leave, I wanted to make a comment to John about the airport renovation. And Brian raised a question about Hilton Head buying into it. Does Bluffton have any kind of play in the airport now?
That's a good question. I think they obviously have some benefit from it.
Is it something to discuss?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good point. Also, much of the area that would actually use the airport from south of the Broad would be in the unincorporated areas, so, we have a piece of it. But you raise a very interesting question, and we'll think about it as we go forward. Good catch.
Okay, thank you. Don't want to leave them out, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, they might get offended.
Now, there could be a little benefit for somebody on St. Helena, too. Is that okay?
I just want to make it clear to county council that with regards to the boat landing and all of that, the county staff is not recommending that we stop maintaining any boat landing. We're going to go over the discussion with you all. I don't want to have a lot of comments or questions about that. We are not proposing that. We're going to present those details to you on Thursday. I did not want to give that impression that we may be abandoning maintenance on boat routes.
I had one question regarding the recreation facilities. If I understand it correctly, these are facilities that we don't own. They're not on our records, but we're maintaining them.
We may have long-standing agreements, but we do not own them, and sometimes it's even questionable as to the validity of those agreements.
Okay.
We will talk through that. Chuck Atkinson, who is the ACA for PALS, will be leading that discussion with you all.
Okay, and we have specific.
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay, not seeing anything else, and congratulations to Brittany on your new responsibilities. Having conducted all of our meeting, we stand adjourned.
But it's a